Alrighty. Here's something a little different for once. We're not looking at Limbus gameplay. Instead, with the upcoming Walpipi showcasing agents from LobCorp, I'd like to go over every reference I could spot alongside their origins. First up, we've got Faint Aroma and Solitude Ryoshu. Once again, the mad Japanese lady is dual-wielding ego gears. At this point, she's just always going to dual-wield them. The first gear mentioned in her ID is Faint Aroma. In this specific case, she's getting a 1-to-1 copy of both the ego weapon and ego suit. A very pink affair with some teal trimmings, but comes from the abnormality Ruina. Notably though, she does not have the ego gift for this abno despite having several others. To get Ruina out of the way first before we discuss the gears, Ruina's designation is T0453. It is a WoW class abnormality, making it a bitch to work with. It's a creepy ass equidae looking affair with 6 legs and an elongated neck, a leafy beard, and a hat of wisteria. Either way, it looks like a nightmarish pink centaur trying to cover up with leaves. The managerial guide is quite simple. The thing reduces its cleave-off counter with a good result, and does the same with a bad result, both with a high probability. With a cleave-off counter of 1, this means it'll breach unless we manage to get a normal work result. In this particular case, that's 8 to 15 boxes, nothing more, nothing less. It takes well to instinct and insight work, essentially aggression and accommodation, but less so to interaction and socializing with the thing, even less so to suppressing its nature in repression. Regardless, attachment work would be key here in order to stay within that normal range if at all possible, though you'd perhaps want to do it with a lower end agent to be sure of the results. All that to say, this thing is a bitch to work with and will breach like a motherfucker. Now when breaching, this thing completely fucks up corridors. It'll teleport to one at random, even main halls at times, before counting up petals. Once the petals reach 3, she'll nuke the room with white damage. If this only turned your agents into rampaging freaks, that'd be fine. But unfortunately, this effect does kill if it zeroes someone's sanity, much like the funny butterfly guy. Now when killed by them, the agents will be wrapped in a pink flowery veil, looking oddly peaceful, but very much dead. The abno will then proceed to keep teleporting around to repeat this function until either suppressed or the day ends. Sanity nukes like these can be needlessly scary in a LobCorp run, especially if your agents are lacking in that department. Certain gifts and abnos like reducing it a fair bit after all. Anyhow, that's the gist of the creepy llama, equidae, centaur, whatever the heck this thing is. For its abno log story, it's quite short even, but does reveal a few unfortunate things. An abnormality that knows of spring's genesis and autumn's passing. Its surface is smooth like ceramic. Its eye sockets are empty. Growing plants fill the cracks. Ryoshu, a lovely one, a doll yearned to be human. It was adored by people, its pupils soulful. Ryoshu, abandoned in a dark forest. Its eyes stolen by crows, lusting for glitter. Its mind, life, and heart slowly withered away. Ryoshu, lacking eyes but all-seeing, a human yearned to be a doll. Bearing the hope to return to dust, it shall go back to the grave with all that desires to live. This thing reads like a bloody sonnet. Shorter than usual one. Kinda makes it more creepy that it is made of ceramic with organic matter spewing out of it. How in the bloody hell one would manage to secure this thing is beyond me considering its teleportation, but I digress. This thing has one more specific appearance in a future game. That of course being the Library of Ruina. Over there it gets quite the glow up, no longer looking like just a ceramic llama with botanicals flooding out of it, but instead a humanoid figure with a ceramic dress and multiple arms, overflowing with petals. There's surprisingly some additional flavor text we can glean here through the abno pages. From flower petals, a card that shows its LobCorp form, petting flower petals in place of tears, you spoke to me. We were all part of Earth once, so I plead you not to speak of the end here and now. As with all abno pages, we also get some extra floating text after using them on our librarians. For this card, it's, I have no eyes, but I can see everything. Let's go back to the grave with all that lives and breathes. These flowers bloom without an end, and not one of them would wither. I am cracked, yet beautiful flowers fill that space. I believe we're starting to get far more existential than initially anticipated, but anyhow, next card. From Autumn's Passing, the figures peacefully passed away among the petals. Bearing the hope to return to dust, it shall go back to the grave with all that desires to live. The floating text here denotes, My atonement ended with a heavy breath in the cold. I was abandoned in a dark forest, my mind, life, and hearts withering away. I was born from Earth, so now I yearn to return to it. Please don't think of this as our last moment. Still keeping up with the existentialism, but instead we can see this all linking back to the doll mentions in the LobCorp lore. And finally, Spring's Genesis, depicting completely flowered over ceramic figures. Unwithering flowers violently bloom, while the floating text reads, "Will you be the one to grant my wish? With unwithering flowers began my magnificent descent to despair. Spring is a season when sins committed anew are forgiven again. We only stay in this world for a fleeting moment." This one takes a surprisingly more positive turn. Now you may be wondering why that may be it, but in terms of mechanics from Ruina, we can only really glean that this is from the positive emotion bias required to enact this card, compared to the neutral and negatives of the previous two, though they're both posited as negative emotions. Nonetheless, we get a doubling down of the doll narrative alongside its progression beyond. After all, the books offer a far more welcoming and potent environment for the abnormalities compared to the containment cells, so perhaps this is the closer interpretation of the real Ryoshu. Anyhow, more importantly, this abnormality is specifically tied to Netzach's floor, more or less tying it to a specific department, that of which being the safety team. From the previous Ryoshu LobCorp ID, we already know that she is the safety team's captain, and this seems to be the case anyhow, considering her band color and designation. We'll see when it does indeed come out. Past there, we should look at the ego gears. Faint Aroma is the name of both the suits and crossbow, those offering white damage and white resistance. The crossbow deals quite a lot of damage to boot, while the suit is a little lacking in other departments for resistances, only offering slightly better black resistance and worse red and pale resistances. Anyhow, the art book and in-game differ a fair bit in terms of details here. Let's start with the art book version. Even after the ego was extracted, it still carried the fragrance of the archetype. Simply carrying it gives the illusion that you're standing in a forest in the middle of nowhere. When flowers substitute all the desire in everyone's hearts, this ego will no longer be needed. Cracks in the equipment are filled with piles of flowers. Where the in-game version differs is by moving the last two lines to separate gears and adding a line each. In the weapons case, the arrowhead is dull and sprouts flowers of vivid color whenever it strikes. We can actually see this funny effect on one of the last frames of gameplay shown in the announcement trailer. Well, anytime she fires it off anyway. As for the suits, it adds the lines, "The ceramic surface is tough, as if it had been glazed several times. May crumple back into primal clay if it is exposed to a powerful mental attack." This one makes a little less sense considering its white damage resistance, but is what it is. Anyhow, the one more of you have likely been waiting for, the Old Lady. This one is a lot shorter since we don't really have a reference in the art book aside from this funny sketch. The Old Lady simply wants company to tell her stories. It will talk to anyone that enters its containment unit. The story it tells will differ, but always begins with, "Dearie, dearie, would you like to hear a story?" Well, this story can take many forms, including lullabies, poems, rhymes, children's tales, or something entirely new. It knows every children's story and will not stop recounting until the listener finally leaves. All that is known from the abnormality log, with one last record attached alongside. She may be the loneliest of all the abnormalities. She's filled with loneliness and tells her tales to fill that void. Well, every story needs a listener. When someone enters her room, she'll try to fill that void. Of course, listening to her is a very dangerous thing. She knows every story on Earth, even those that cannot possibly exist. Our minds can't cope with such a thing. She could fry your brain in an instant. Of course, the last part there doesn't come into play in practice while playing LobCorp, far as I'm aware, but it would be pretty funny if there was a small chance of your noggin exploding from sheer incomprehension. Anyhow, for references within Ryoshu's stuff. First off, Ryoshu looks like she's stolen her chair. Unless they happen to move a chair in there for those who are listening to the stories, then Ryoshu has gone ahead and thrown her off. We also see the abnormality's breaching ability, though it's not too much of one, all things considered. Specifically, this abnormality is one of those that gets lonely when not given attention and thus throws a bit of a tantrum. In this case, the containment unit fills up with black fog, nicknamed as Solitude, which clings onto the next agent that works with her to deal continuous white damage until it wears off. Ryoshu is specifically equipping the ego weapon as a backup piece by the look of it. This is the Solitude part of her ID name. This is a revolver that deals white damage at very fast speed. We get to watch her fan the hammer with this thing, which is admittedly really cool and woke up a few of my mates the moment they saw it. For the details on this thing, a strong sense of loneliness still lingers, even in the form of an ego. Its bullets create a void that cannot be filled on the victim's soul, rather than a wound upon their flesh and bones. It was a rusty weapon from the beginning. But very much an ego gun, with the second line more or less making up the whites instead of red damage. Moving along though, let's cover a few of her ego gifts. From what I'm aware of, she has two on her. Those being the Solitude glasses from the old lady and the noise radio from 1.76 MHz. Compared to her previous iteration in Red Eyes and Penitence, she does not have the wrist cutter bandages. Now I'd like to handle the next fella. We've got Hornet Alteration Merceau. Since he's not dual wielding, this should be a fair bit faster. The main ego gear to look at here is Hornet, specifically from the Queen Bee abnormality. As another WoW, it seems we're continuing the trend of higher end abnos since Queen of Hatred Dawn and Kodya. This one isn't nearly as troublesome as our Ruina, but can cause an awful chain reaction if it ever breaches. In the case of Queen Bee, this is in the form of spores that infect employees. Those that die with the spores active will be reborn as worker bees, who will then indiscriminately murder more employees, converting their corpses into more worker bees. With a cleave-off counter of just 1, this can be entirely fatal, but thankfully the counter only lowers if work was normal or bad, meaning so long as it is worked with appropriately, there will be no issues whatsoever. As for the abno log story, I lied about it being particularly quick. Strap in for a bit, we're going for a read. Its form appears to be an amalgamation of a gargantuan beehive and a bee. The cross-section of the inside shows a darkish red surface with particles here and there, much like that of raw meat. The segment that appears to be the face is heavily distorted. It has wings, but they've lost their intended function of flight. The one eye that remains relatively intact shows pupillary movements, as if to watch for approaching intruders. The abnormality always remains still, so it is assumed that it does not move. When certain conditions are met, it releases spores. It will generate billions of spores within a 20-meter radius. The existence of life forms in its vicinity seems to be one of the key requirements. When it did, there was no immediate change in the employees who inhaled the spores, and no anomalous signs that could be detected on the examinations that followed. Once more time had passed, the employee experienced severe pain in their occipital lobe and abdomen. Then after a certain period of time, their head dislodged from their body, and a worker bee emerged from the separated body. It has been confirmed that the spores carry drone eggs that hatch inside a living host. Based on the findings of an autopsy done on an employee killed by the abnormality, we believe that the larvae will subsist on any portion of the body, be it blood, organs, or fats. It will move freely around the body at this stage. When it becomes too large to move, it creates a cocoon near the intestines. The host feels extreme hunger at this stage, eating more than usual. The cocoon moves upwards through the body as it grows, eventually damaging the arteries of the throats and the cricothyroid with its jaws as it severs the host's head from its body. After this, it will emerge from the body, exasperating the wound of the host further. Excerpt from counseling log. Redacted. Had been telling me about his itchy neck for a while. He complained about indigestion too. One time I saw him take a bunch of digestives. Who would have thought that it'd turn out to be such a serious issue? I never knew I'd be the one to witness that horrible moment. Omitted. Redacted and I were just chatting, but suddenly he stopped speaking. He was still scratching his neck. It was turning so red. Getting worried. Then his neck started to turn at a strange angle. Right then and there I realized the severity of the situation. There was no way he could have been putting his neck that way on his own. It looked like someone was forcefully twisting his neck. And then I heard a zip, like the noise of shredding paper. A foreign sound of something tearing. His head fell to the floor. I heard a dull thud. Then, as if enough hadn't already happened, something began to crawl out of his neck. Just like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, tearing apart his headless body, the wings, the yellow trunk, the teeth that gnawed away at his body. It's something I never wanted to see again. A being I'd hate to describe as something alive. Omitted. It seemed to be aware of me somehow, but it looked like it didn't have any reason to attack at that moment. It picked up his cranium and flew away, like a drone carrying honey. I can still hear the sound of its jaw rattling and its wings beating. The worker bee. Its appearance is clearly different from queen bees. Other than its color, it is capable of flight, but can only hover about 1 meter above the ground. It lacks antennae or eyes. A long appendage that appears to be an intestine drags behind its rear on the floor. Worker bees show only two forms of behavior, delivering nutrients to the queen and proliferating. Upon encountering an employee, it uses its jaw to crush their head, and proceeds to inject a pupa into their body. Yeah, not bloody pleasant at all. The art book only makes things out to be worse with the annotations. The queen is an amalgam with free mouths and atrophied wings, as if used to the royal treatments of being fed. On a brighter note, this thing pops up in Ruina too, where we get a glimpse further into an environment that suits it more so. Through its pages, we can glean these bits of lore and text. Spores, depicting the previously mentioned breach and spread of the spores. It has been confirmed that the spores carry drone eggs that hatch inside a living host. Not a pleasant thought, but beyond there, the floating text offers. Even if a drone dies, I can always make more to fill their role. To bring my kingdom to greatness, I need more bees. Do you know where all my drones have gone to? Look at the great blue sky while you can. This is the only positive facing page, so from here on I reckon it's going to get worse. Worker bee, depicting a chest bursting bee, well, throat bursting I suppose. They show only two forms of behavior, delivering nutrients to the queen and proliferating. The floating text on the other hand gives us, my bees, it is time to move. Your wing, legs, jaw, put every part of your body to work, lest they pillage our honey. Make haste, my minions. We cannot waste a minute. Who will remember the bees that have died for the kingdom? Huh. Surprisingly not the worst, all things considered, with the imagery offered, though perhaps slightly delusional. Moving along to her last card though. Loyalty, showing the queen and her workers. The loyalty of bees is a naturally developed instinct. If we discover a way to draw forth that instinct, many things could change. Weaponizing the bee's nature is mentioned here, suppose that's a natural conclusion. For the floating text, we get something of a gaslighting from the queen, which matches up with this card's -2 bias. Hurry and supply me with more honey. I am the kingdom, and the kingdom is I. Loyalty to me is loyalty to your kingdom. Even if your wings are torn, you should give your everything to serve as long as your legs are working. Giving one's life is an empty vow. What I want from you is to survive and continue to protect me. The queen and her simps, something like that. Regardless, real funky to throw onto Musou considering the funny Maman stuff that's been shown off in some of his other stuff. As for the ego gears, we've got the Hornet pieces, those being a rifle and a pretty straightforward suit. The gun looks something like a lever action or old-fashioned hunting rifle, at least takes on that kind of form factor. It deals 7 to 8 red damage, meaning we're getting physical with this one compared to both of Ryoshu's weapons being white damage. In terms of the details, the kingdom needed to stay prosperous, and more bees were required for that task. The name of that kingdom may go down in history, but who will be there to remember the bees that gave their lives for the cause? The weapon's bullets selectively fly towards threats, so skillful aiming isn't required. All that's needed is the will to hit the targets. The projectiles relive the legacy of the kingdom as they travel toward the targets. We take this at face value, the man has auto-aim, which only makes him form shifting this into a shotgun even funnier. The only thing more disgusting than a shotgun is one with homing properties. With every pellet hitting its target no matter what, that's maximum damage potential every time, surely. Something, imagine Mister, but with a shotgun instead of a revolver. That said, he seems to do this fancy spin before the form shift happens. Maybe they'll elaborate on that with his uptie story later. Then there's the suit. It's a pretty standard one. Honey bee coloration with good resistance all round, minus pale. In the way of details, we get 2 more lines. The kingdom's name may go down in history, but who will remember the bees that gave their life to the cause? The glory of the past now remains as a stigma. There's a surprising amount of forlornness in both texts, considering that the abno looks more or less to be a disgraced queen bee or fallen one. Suppose that checks out. After all, a lot of lines from both LobCorp and Ruina seem to point in that direction, alongside an over-reliance on the worker bees to boot. Now if we look at the fellow's ego gifts, we've got 2 prominent ones. First one being the Hornet hat, consisting of a wide-brimmed hat with a wing, almost evoking that musketeer look. Past there is Beak from Punishing Bird. There's this whole schizo-posted theory about it somewhere on Twitter, linking to Hohenheim and his Ide, but that's neither here nor there for the time being. The image of Musou cleaning up after the bird is a pretty funny prospect anyhow. That's about all I've got to throw for you, at least for the time being. If you enjoyed the content, please like the video, and if you'd like to see more stuff from me in the future, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to go further than that, you can support via joining up on YouTube memberships or Patreon. Big thanks to the one fella currently supporting via Patreon, that being my mate Artie. Once again though, thanks for listening or using me as second monitor content. Hope this video finds you well.